Dear Commissioner, Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, it is a pleasure for me to speak before such a distinguished audience. And the topic, child's right to own identity, is a complex one, especially in the context of the current refugee crisis. As we heard in the morning, millions of people with different backgrounds, identities and cultural heritage are arriving in Europe, and hundreds of thousands of them are children. But at the same time, many European states are still struggling with the integration of migrants that have come here years ago and who are already here. So the past decades have shown that the integration process has not been as smooth as we would have wanted it to be. But the main problem seems not to lie in the cases where different values openly clash. For example, female genital mutilation or marriages with young children are not tolerated in Europe, although sadly, these are still traditional practices in some countries. So it is the right of the host country to protect its core values. When the traditions or customs of a migrant are in conflict with the constitutional values of the host state. Like the examples I mentioned, the state has the right to force its rules on migrants, and this is something that anyone moving to another country has to accept. Of course, there are borderline cases where the link to core values is not so clear. In these cases, it is challenging to find a fair balance between the rights of migrants to preserve their customs and the rights of locals to preserve theirs. For example, the question of the right to wear headscarves in public places. This question has been a lot debated on in Europe. Judging barely on media coverage, one could consider it one of the most important questions of integration. But is the right to wear a headscarf really the most important question concerning integration? Or is it a sign of a deeper concern? Concern about losing one's identity? Has the headscarf become a symbol of the cultural heritage and identity of many migrants? We may debate what the headscarf symbolizes. Is it a symbol of suppression of women? Or is it a symbol of roots and identity? And I will not go deeper into that discussion now. But now we come to an important question. Who has the right to decide what is the identity of another person? Can others decide on someone else's identity? As we heard in the morning from young ladies, one of the obstacles of integration is putting people into boxes and putting labels on them. A migrant, a refugee, a Muslim. Stereotypes influence how we see others that are different from us. But every person has more than one role and might have more than one identity. So we can alleviate the tension and help integration if we accept the dual or multiple identities of migrants. No child should feel that he or she cannot be Estonian because he or she has Russian, Ukrainian or Syrian roots. And becoming an Estonian does not mean that the child has to cut off the roots and the cultural heritage. Identity cannot be forced on people. So every person should have the right to determine his or her own identity, and we should accept it. When people are not afraid of losing their identity, they are more open to dialogue and integration. We have heard many times today how important education is, and I agree. So when talking about the integration of children, it is not possible to overestimate the role of schools and kindergartens. They should be inclusive. There should be no segregation based on language or ethnic background. And we should strive for schools and kindergartens that accept and support children with dual or multiple identities. Schools that teach the state language should also teach the mother tongue of minority children. Schools where the interaction of children with different cultural backgrounds is supported and where the children feel that their identity is not threatened These are schools that we want. And I'm sure that in the following panel, we will hear many good practices that have worked well in integrating migrant children and families in our societies. So I thank you, and I wish you a fruitful discussion.